In this grid drawing, you're going to practice using measuring and plotting and using negative space to check for accuracy. You're going to need a very sharp number 2 pencil with an eraser. And then out of a separate sheet of paper, go ahead and cut out some measuring sticks. So just strips of paper, it doesn't matter how wide they are. Let's go ahead and start with the first square and see how many times bigger we need to make it. You can tell this by measuring the side of the square and seeing how many fit in. So 1, 2 fit in. So we need to make everything 2 times the size. So let's go ahead and locate column 4, row E. So we're going to be working in this square. This edge is this edge is this edge, and so on. So what you're going to do is you're going to decide what we're going to measure. So anything that crosses the edges of this square is going to be measured. So that would be here. I'm going to put little tiny dots, don't make them too big, where all those lines cross. Now the tip of the paper always lines up with the dot. So there's a dot. I'm putting the tip of the paper on the dot, and this side of the paper is resting on the edge of the box. So let me hold it up so you can see a little bit of the shadow on that paper. Okay, and then I'm marking the bottom of the box. That edge is this edge and this edge. So it was lined up here, and the mark was lined up with the bottom of the square. So always pay attention. Where is it lined up before you transfer it, because you have to put it in the same area of that larger box. So that's lined up. And then the dot was at the tip of the paper, but I need to double it. So I'm going to make a little tiny mark that I'm going to erase. I slide my line up to that mark, and I go twice. That second mark is the one I'm keeping. The first mark I'm erasing. And now that's perfectly accurate. I can either scratch off my old mark or I can flip the paper over. So now I'm going to put the tip of the paper on the dot. It's lined up on the line, and I can see where the edge of my box is, but I might have to see that edge better, put it on this outside edge. Tip of the paper, pointing to the dot. I'm not really covering the whole dot up, just pointing to it. Mark the edge of the box. Now I'm lined up here and here. So reline it up in the same location. You'll get used to it. And the tip of the paper is where the dot should go. And then that was once and twice. I don't need the first dot, I only need the second dot, so I'm going to erase the first one. And once I have these two, I can carefully look at the subtle bumps and draw what I see. Now we have 2 more dots. I can fold this over so I have a clean edge again. Tip of the paper on the dot. Mark the edge of the box. See where I have this lined up. The mark is lined up on the edge. And so that's this edge. Reline it up. There and there. And once, slide it, line that up, twice. On that second dot, I can go ahead and start drawing in the line like I see it. It's kind of like a thicker line at the bottom. And erase the first dot. So you can get used to, I want you to measure and plot most of them with paper. But you can also use your pencil. So that method would look like this, the tip of the pencil on the dot. I mark the edge of the box with my thumb. And you need to be looking straight down so that you're not inaccurate with this. Reline my thumb up on the edge of the box, and I go that distance once. Slide my thumb up to that mark twice. And then I only need the second mark. And draw the rest of the line. The last thing you do before you leave the box is check your negative space for accuracy. So I don't know what's positive and what's negative space, but it doesn't really matter. I want you to think of this all as shapes. And I'm going to look at this larger shape and then come back over here and see if it matches, and it does. Then I'm going to look at this smaller shape and then these other two shapes and see if both of those match. They do, so I can go ahead and move on. So you're going to continue to measure and plot for each of these. I'm going to do one more with you, and you're going to do the rest on your own. So let's go ahead and do 3A. So we're going to work in this square. I'm going to put the tip of the paper on my dot, so my dot's going to be here, and here is where I'm measuring. So tip of the paper on the dot, mark the edge of the box. Reline it up on the same side of the square, which was here. So this is lined up on this line, the mark is lined up on the bottom of the square, and I go that distance once, that distance twice. I do not need the first mark. I'm going to sketch in a little bit of the top of that line, and then measure how far over it is. Tip of the paper on the dot, mark the edge of the box, that distance once, and that distance twice. Don't need my first mark. Now I'm going to very carefully look at the shapes. Kind of pokes out, dips in, gets a little bit wider, and then there's another shape right there. Double check your negative space. I'm looking at this larger shape, and it looks right. I'm looking at this smaller shape, and that looks right. And then I'm going to move on to the next one. So as you finish these, you can cross them out so you don't get confused. And then go ahead and complete the assignment using measuring and plotting. You're doubling the distances and checking for accuracy using your negative space.